Next we have the marking equipment, and the very first one is the fabric marking pen. It's used to mark notches, darts, circles, squares, and the best thing about it is it actually disappears after you mark on it. It either disappears with air or with water. So, if I were to mark a notch or let's say that this had a circle here for placement of something, then I would just give it a little tiny X, or I could just do a little tiny dot if I just want a little tiny dot on there. And when I come back tomorrow, this actually evaporates with air. I can also put just a drop of water on it and it's going to disappear. So that is your fabric marking pen. You have to be very careful with these. When I'm working with bridal clothes, like bridal gowns, I always use the ones that disappear. So what I'll do is I'll mark them first, and then I go and pin it together. Or I can either use the thread, which is also a marking tool, to sew it together, or to sew where I need to pin something, or use it as a marking spot. So thread can also be used to mark things. Obviously, if you're marking something on a white dress, you may want to use red thread just so you can see it better or easier. All right, the next thing I'm going to talk about is the tailor's chalk. It comes in a variety of sizes, colors, and you can do the same exact thing with it. I'm just going to draw a little dot here. Pretend like we're going to mark a dart. So if we had to make a dart in something, darts look like large triangles. Notches are tiny triangles here. So, you can mark either one. You can mark your notches or you can mark your darts using the chalk. This tailor's chalk typically will wipe away. But you have to be very careful because sometimes it can linger, so you do have to be careful if you're using something delicate and fine. You want to make sure that you only put one little tiny dot, and then that way you can wipe it away. But that is for the more experienced seamstress or sewer. The last thing that I want to talk about is the tracing wheel and tracing paper. The tracing wheel, they come in a smooth edge for finer fabrics and the rigid edge for thicker fabrics. So the way that this works is you use this carbon paper here, and the carbon coloring, you can tell this one's been used quite a bit by students, but the carbon coloring transfers directly onto the fabric. So I'm just going to demonstrate that for you. If we were going to do a dart on this, I can just lay it on this top layer here. This would obviously be the wrong side of the fabric. And I'm just going to transfer. We would have our paper pattern on top right here, and the paper pattern would have the actual dart on it, and you just transfer the dart to your fabric there. So you can see I transferred it using the paper and the fabric. So that's how the tracing wheel and tracing paper work. The last section that we're going to talk about is the sewing equipment. The first thing that we come to are your hand sewing needles, and you can see that they come in a variety of sizes here. They are used for, well, as far as the sizes, one, which would be a larger one, is used for coarse, thick fabrics. And this is opposite of what your sewing machine needles are. Your sewing machine needles have the eye of the needle, right there would be the eye at the end, whereas on your hand sewing needles, the eye is down here on the bottom where your thread goes through. And you guys can see that that's how the thread is in the needle. It goes through the needle like this. So your hand sewing needles, the smaller the number, the larger the needle. And you can see that, you know, this one would be used for coarse, thick fabrics. This thinner one right here would be used for, let me see if I can get this to focus. I don't think it's going to want to focus on me. Anyway, this thinner one would be used for finer fabrics, so like a number 12, and this would be a number 1. Okay, so it's used for basting, which is just a temporary stitch, hemming pants, putting buttons on, sewing on snaps, hooks, eyes, anything that has to be hand sewn. And in the industry, in the garment industry, they do make buttonhole machines or button setting machines. But if you're sewing at home by hand, you have to use a hand sewing needle to sew these items on. So there are 2 different sizes, number 12, number 1. You can see the difference in each one of those. The second thing is going to be the thimble. And the thimble can be plastic, it can be wood, metal, and it's basically used to help protect you while you're hand sewing. The thimbles come in a variety of sizes, just depending on, you know, what size you need. They have little tiny dimples in there to help you push the needle through the fabric whenever you have thick fabrics or thick areas that you're trying to sew through. So the thimble is just there to protect your fingers. The thread, needle threader, and the really cool thing is my new sewing machines have needle threaders on them. I'm so excited for you guys to use them. But this is a needle threader, and you just basically loop your thread through here, and then you push it through the eye of the needle. All right, so you put your needle threader through there, and then you place your thread on the other side through your needle threader like this. And like magic, you pull it through your needle. And you have threaded your needle. Voila, so easy, much easier than trying to sit there and look through that little tiny eye. Okay, so that's your needle threader. The next thing is a bodkin, which I do not have a bodkin here. I'll grab one in just a second. The pointer, this is a pointer, and this pointer helps you to push your corners out, and anything that has a corner on it, even collars, this could be used for just pushing it out. Now, obviously, that's in the sewing process and not in the pressing process, so don't get this confused with your point presser. This is your pointer, which just pushes everything out, pushes all your corners out. And the last thing is this handy dandy loop turner. We will make a scrunchie in here, and that scrunchie is basically a long tube, and you push this down into the one end, and then you grab it and you pull it back through the your thing as you're going. And so that way it helps you to be able to turn your fabric as you are making your scrunchie. And that is it for our sewing equipment.